Welcome, and thank you for being here. You may be listening from a quiet room with the lights dimmed, or perhaps already lying in bed, letting the day slowly fade away. Wherever you are, there's nothing you need to do right now. You don't need to focus, remember, or try to understand everything. This space is designed for rest, curiosity, and gentle learning. Tonight's journey is about reality itself, not in a dramatic or overwhelming way, but in a calm, thoughtful way. We'll explore how the universe became what it is, how the laws of nature took shape, and how the reality you experience every day emerged from simple beginnings. This is not a lecture you need to stay awake for. It's a slow, soothing exploration of ideas that can drift in and out of your awareness. If you fall asleep along the way, that's perfectly fine. The rhythm of the story is meant to support rest, not demand attention. Reality often feels solid and unchanging. The ground beneath you, the air around you, the steady flow of time. But science shows us that everything we experience is the result of processes that began long before stars, planets, or even atoms existed. The universe was not always structured the way it is now. It evolved, slowly and naturally, into the reality we recognize. In this video, we'll talk about how order emerged from simplicity, how physical laws formed, and how the universe settled into patterns that allow matter, energy, and life to exist. We'll move gently through physics, cosmology, and the science of nature, always at a pace meant to calm the mind. You don't need a background in science to follow along. These ideas belong to everyone. They describe the shared reality we all inhabit, even if we rarely stop to think about how it came to be. As you listen, you might notice your thoughts slowing. Your breathing may become more even. That's a natural response. The mind often relaxes when it stops chasing immediate concerns and begins to drift through broader perspectives. We'll begin at the very beginning, not with equations or technical details, but with a simple question. How did anything exist at all? And how did that first existence turn into the structured universe we now call reality? In the next part, we'll start by exploring what scientists mean when they talk about the origin of the universe and why the concept of a beginning is more subtle than it first appears. When scientists talk about the beginning of reality, they often begin with the Big Bang. This term can be misleading because it suggests an explosion happening at a specific point in space. In reality, the Big Bang describes the expansion of space itself. It was not matter expanding into emptiness, but space expanding everywhere at once. According to current evidence, the universe began in an extremely hot, dense state, roughly 13.8 billion years ago. At that moment, all energy, matter, space, and time were compressed into conditions far beyond anything we can reproduce today. This was not a moment within time as we usually understand it. It was the moment when time itself began. This idea challenges everyday intuition. We are used to thinking of time as something that flows endlessly forward and backward. But physics suggests that time has a boundary. Asking what happened before the Big Bang may be like asking what is north of the North Pole. The question assumes a framework that may not apply. As the universe expanded, it cooled. This cooling allowed energy to transform into matter. Particles formed, interacted, and gradually settled into stable configurations. This process did not happen instantly. It unfolded over vast stretches of time, guided by fundamental physical laws. One of the most important aspects of this early universe was symmetry. At extremely high energies, forces that now appear distinct may have been unified. As the universe cooled, these symmetries broke. The fundamental forces separated into the forms we observe today: gravity, electromagnetism, and the nuclear forces. This separation shaped everything that followed. The emergence of physical laws was not arbitrary. The values of fundamental constants, such as the strength of gravity or the charge of the electron, determined how matter behaved. Slight changes in these values could have resulted in a universe without stars, without chemistry, or without stable structures. This raises a profound question. Why do the laws of physics have the form they do? Science can describe how these laws operate, but explaining why they exist in this particular configuration remains an open question. Some theories suggest that many possible universes could exist, each with different laws, and we inhabit one that allows complexity simply because it can. As space continued to expand and cool, the simplest particles combined into more complex ones. Protons and neutrons formed atomic nuclei. Later, electrons joined these nuclei to form atoms. Hydrogen and helium dominated the early universe, providing the raw material for future stars. Gravity played a crucial role in shaping reality. Tiny variations in density allowed matter to clump together. Over time, these clumps grew larger, collapsing under their own gravity to form the first stars. Inside these stars, nuclear fusion began, creating heavier elements. This process transformed the universe from a nearly uniform sea of particles into a structured cosmos filled with light, heat, and complexity. Stars lived and died, scattering elements into space. These elements later formed new stars, planets, and eventually the chemical foundations of life. From this perspective, reality is not static. It is the result of continuous transformation. The universe did not simply appear fully formed. It evolved step by step, guided by physical principles that operate consistently across time and space. Importantly, these processes did not require intention or direction. There was no plan or goal embedded in the early universe. Complexity emerged naturally from simple rules applied repeatedly over vast spans of time. This is one of the most striking lessons of modern science. Reality, as we experience it, depends on layers of structure. At the smallest scales, quantum processes govern particles. At larger scales, classical physics describes motion and forces. At the largest scales, gravity shapes galaxies and cosmic expansion. These layers interact, creating the stable world we inhabit. Understanding this helps place human experience in context. The solid objects around you, the flow of time you feel, even the chemistry of your body, are consequences of events that began billions of years ago. Reality carries a deep history within it. As these structures became more complex, new properties emerged. Temperature, pressure, solidity, and eventually life itself are not fundamental features of the universe. They arise from interactions between simpler components. This concept of emergence is central to understanding how reality became what it is. Science continues to refine this picture. Observations of cosmic background radiation, galaxy distribution, and particle behavior all support the idea of an evolving universe shaped by consistent laws. Yet many details remain unknown. The nature of dark matter, dark energy, and the earliest moments of expansion are still being explored. Despite these unknowns, one conclusion remains clear. Reality is not accidental in the sense of being random or chaotic. It follows patterns. It unfolds according to principles that allow order to arise naturally. As you listen, it may help to let these ideas settle gently. There is no need to hold on to every detail. The important thing is the overall sense of continuity. Reality began in simplicity, expanded through time, and gradually formed the structures that make experience possible. In the next part, we'll move deeper into the idea of physical laws themselves, exploring how they shape the universe and why they remain remarkably stable across vast scales of space and time. The physical laws that govern reality are often treated as fixed and timeless. Gravity behaves the same today as it did billions of years ago. Light moves at a constant speed. Energy follows predictable rules. This consistency is one of the reasons the universe is understandable at all. Without stable laws, patterns could not persist, and complexity could not arise. Yet these laws did not necessarily exist in their current form from the very beginning. In the earliest moments of the universe, conditions were extreme. Temperatures and energies were so high that the distinctions between forces may not have existed. As the universe expanded and cooled, the behavior of matter and energy changed. What we now call physical laws emerged gradually as stable patterns of interaction. This idea can be difficult to grasp because we tend to think of laws as instructions written into the universe. In reality, physical laws are descriptions of how systems behave under certain conditions. They summarize regularities observed over time. When conditions change, the regularities can change as well. In the early universe, particles interacted in ways that no longer occur naturally today. Forces that are now separate may have been unified. As symmetry broke, interactions became more specialized. This process shaped the structure of reality, determining which particles could exist and how they would interact. One striking feature of physical laws is their mathematical simplicity. Complex phenomena often arise from relatively simple equations. This simplicity allows small changes to be amplified over time, producing a wide range of outcomes. From the same basic laws, stars, galaxies, weather systems, and living organisms all emerge. This raises an important question. Why are the laws of physics so well suited to producing complexity? Some scientists argue that this is a matter of selection. If many possible sets of laws exist, only those that allow stable structures can give rise to observers capable of asking the question. In this view, the universe does not need to be designed. It only needs to be consistent. Others suggest that deeper principles may underlie the laws we observe. These principles could limit the range of possible laws, making certain structures inevitable. This remains an open area of research, connecting physics, cosmology, and philosophy. Regardless of their origin, physical laws provide the framework within which reality unfolds. They govern how energy flows, how matter organizes, and how time progresses. They are the reason the universe behaves predictably rather than chaotically. Time itself is closely tied to these laws. In everyday experience, time feels like a steady flow from past to future. In physics, time is treated as a dimension, similar to space. Events are ordered, not by a universal clock, but by their relationships to one another. In the early universe, time behaved differently. Rapid expansion and extreme energy conditions affected how processes unfolded. As the universe cooled, time settled into the more familiar structure we experience today. This evolution of time is inseparable from the evolution of physical laws. Another essential concept is causality. Causes precede effects. This principle allows events to be linked in meaningful ways. Without it, prediction would be impossible. Causality depends on the structure of space and time, and on the limits imposed by the speed of information transfer. The speed of light plays a central role here. It sets the maximum speed at which information can travel. This limit shapes how different parts of the universe influence one another. It also ensures that cause and effect relationships remain consistent. As reality expanded, regions of the universe became causally disconnected. Events in one region could no longer affect distant regions. This separation allowed different structures to evolve independently while still following the same fundamental laws. Despite this separation, the universe remains remarkably uniform on large scales. This uniformity suggests that the early universe was governed by simple, consistent rules that applied everywhere. Small variations were amplified over time, but the underlying framework remained the same. Physical laws also impose limits. Not everything that can be imagined can exist. Some configurations of matter are unstable. Some processes violate conservation principles. These limits shape the range of possible realities. At the same limits, there is enormous flexibility. The same laws that govern subatomic particles also govern galaxies. They allow for an incredible diversity of structures and behaviors. Reality is constrained, but not rigid. This balance between constraint and freedom is what allows the universe to be both stable and dynamic. Structures can persist long enough to matter, while change continues to occur. This balance is essential for the emergence of complexity and life. Understanding physical laws as evolving patterns rather than static commands helps reframe how we think about reality. The universe is not following instructions imposed from outside. It is behaving according to relationships that emerged naturally as conditions changed. As these laws stabilized, the universe became increasingly structured. Matter clumped into galaxies. Stars formed predictable life cycles. Chemistry followed reliable pathways. These regularities created the foundation for environments where complexity could deepen. In the next part, we'll explore how matter organized itself under these laws, moving from simple particles to large-scale structures like galaxies and cosmic webs, and how this organization further shaped the reality we experience today. As the physical laws of the universe settled into stable patterns, matter began to organize itself on increasingly larger scales. In the earliest moments after particles formed, the universe was still remarkably uniform. Matter and energy were spread almost evenly throughout space, with only tiny differences in density from one region to another. These small differences were crucial. Gravity, though the weakest of the fundamental forces, acts over vast distances. Wherever matter was slightly denser, gravity pulled surrounding material inward. Over immense periods of time, these small variations grew, drawing matter together and creating the first large-scale structures. The earliest structures were not stars or galaxies, but vast clouds of gas. Hydrogen and helium, the simplest and most abundant elements, collected into enormous regions where gravity slowly increased pressure and temperature. As these clouds collapsed, their centers grew hotter and denser. Eventually, conditions at the core of some clouds became extreme enough to ignite nuclear fusion. This marked the birth of the first stars. These early stars were unlike most stars we see today. They were massive, short-lived, and intensely bright. Their formation transformed the universe. Inside stars, fusion processes created heavier elements. Carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, and many others were forged in stellar cores. When massive stars exhausted their fuel, they ended their lives in powerful explosions, scattering these newly formed elements into surrounding space. This cycle of star birth and death enriched the universe. Each generation of stars contained more complex elements than the last. Over time, this allowed for the formation of rocky planets, complex chemistry, and eventually environments capable of supporting life. As stars formed in groups, gravity drew them into galaxies. Galaxies themselves are not isolated objects. They are connected by vast filaments of matter, forming what scientists call the cosmic web. On the largest scales, matter in the universe is arranged in an intricate network of clusters, filaments, and voids. These structures emerged naturally from the interplay between gravity and expansion. The universe continues to expand, pulling galaxies apart on large scales, while gravity holds them together locally. This tension between expansion and attraction shapes the overall architecture of reality. Galaxies evolved over billions of years. They collided, merged, and grew. These interactions triggered bursts of star formation and reshaped galactic structures. The universe became increasingly diverse, filled with spiral galaxies, elliptical galaxies, and irregular forms. Within galaxies, matter continued to organize into smaller systems. Planets formed from disks of gas and dust around young stars. These disks followed predictable physical processes, governed by gravity, rotation, and energy exchange. On planets like Earth, conditions allowed chemistry to become increasingly complex. Molecules combined into larger structures. Energy flowed through systems, driving reactions that produced self-organizing behavior. While the origin of life remains an active area of research, it is clear that it depended on the stable physical environment created by cosmic evolution. From this perspective, reality is layered. Large-scale cosmic structures provide the context in which smaller-scale processes occur. Each level depends on the stability of the levels below it. Atoms depend on physical constants. Molecules depend on atomic interactions. Life depends on chemical stability. Despite this complexity, the same basic laws apply everywhere. The physics that governs distant galaxies also governs the atoms in your body. This universality is one of the most remarkable features of reality. It suggests that the universe is not a collection of separate systems, but a single coherent whole. Matter organization also introduces the concept of irreversibility. As structures form, energy spreads out. This process is described by the second law of thermodynamics, which states that entropy tends to increase over time. While local order can arise, the overall trend is toward greater disorder. This increase in entropy gives time its direction. It distinguishes past from future. The formation of stars, planets, and life all occur within this irreversible flow. Reality does not simply exist in time, it unfolds through it. Yet, even as entropy increases, complexity can grow. This is because energy gradients allow local systems to organize temporarily. Stars shine by releasing energy. Living systems maintain order by consuming energy. These processes are temporary, but they can persist for long periods. Understanding this balance between order and disorder helps explain why reality appears stable on human timescales. Structures endure long enough to be meaningful, even though change is inevitable. The universe supports patterns without freezing into permanence. As matter continued to organize, new properties emerged. Temperature, pressure, solidity, and chemical reactivity are not fundamental features. They arise from collective behavior. Reality becomes richer as interactions multiply. This layered structure sets the stage for the emergence of observers. Conscious beings arise not because the universe was designed for them, but because the universe allows complexity to deepen under stable conditions. Awareness becomes possible when systems reach sufficient organization. As we move forward, we'll shift focus from the external structure of reality to the internal experience of it. In the next part, we'll explore how complex physical systems give rise to perception, experience, and the sense of being part of the reality they inhabit. As matter organized into increasingly complex structures, a new question naturally emerged. How does a physical system come to experience reality from the inside? At what point does interaction become perception? And when does complexity turn into awareness? From a scientific perspective, perception begins with information. Physical systems interact with their environment through energy exchange. Light strikes a surface. Sound waves move through air. Chemical molecules bind to receptors. These interactions carry information about the external world. In simple systems, information passes through without interpretation. A rock absorbs heat. A molecule vibrates. There is no internal representation of what is happening. In biological systems, however, information is processed. Signals are detected, transformed, and used to guide behavior. Nervous systems evolved as a way to handle increasing amounts of information. Early organisms responded directly to stimuli. Over time, more complex systems emerged that could integrate multiple signals. compare them, and adjust responses accordingly. This integration allowed organisms to navigate their environment more effectively. In humans and other animals with complex brains, information processing reaches a new level. Signals from different senses are combined into a unified experience. Vision, hearing, touch, and internal bodily states are not processed separately. They are woven together into a coherent picture of reality. This integration is essential for perception. Without it, experience would fragment into unrelated sensations. Instead, the brain creates continuity. It builds a stable representation of the world, even though sensory input is constantly changing. Neuroscience suggests that perception is not a passive recording of reality. It is an active process. The brain predicts incoming information based on past experience and updates these predictions when new data arrives. What you perceive is a combination of sensory input and expectation. This predictive nature of perception explains why reality feels stable. The brain fills in gaps, smooths transitions, and resolves ambiguities. It prioritizes coherence over accuracy. This approach is efficient and adaptive, but it also means that experience is shaped by internal models. These internal models are not conscious thoughts. They operate automatically, beneath awareness. Yet they influence everything you perceive. The color of an object, the distance to a sound, the continuity of motion, all depend on how the brain interprets signals. As systems became more complex, perception expanded beyond immediate stimuli. Memory allowed past experiences to influence present perception. Anticipation allowed organisms to prepare for future events. These capabilities transformed perception into something dynamic and flexible. At this stage, the boundary between perception and cognition begins to blur. The brain does not simply detect reality. It interprets it, evaluates it, and assigns significance. This process gives rise to meaning. Meaning is not a property of the external world. It arises from the relationship between an organism and its environment. A sound is meaningful if it signals danger or opportunity. A shape is meaningful if it represents food or shelter. Meaning reflects relevance to survival and well-being. As brains grew more sophisticated, this relevance extended inward. Organisms began to represent not only the external world, but their own internal states. Hunger, pain, comfort, and emotion became part of the perceptual landscape. This internal awareness laid the groundwork for more advanced forms of experience. The brain began to model itself, tracking its own activity and responses. This self-monitoring is a crucial step towards consciousness. Importantly, none of these processes require a separate observer inside the brain. There is no central point where experience happens. Instead, awareness emerges from the coordinated activity of many systems working together. Research suggests that consciousness depends on the integration of information across widespread brain networks. When information flows freely between regions, experience becomes unified. When this flow is disrupted, awareness fragments or disappears. This integration is dynamic. It changes with state. During deep sleep, integration decreases. During focused attention, certain networks dominate. During dreaming, internal models become more active than sensory input. Perception is therefore not fixed. It adapts to context. The reality you experience while awake differs from the reality you experience while dreaming, even though the same brain is involved. Understanding perception as a constructive process helps explain why reality feels personal. Two people can experience the same environment differently. Their brains bring different histories, expectations, and sensitivities to the same sensory input. Yet, this subjectivity does not mean reality is purely internal. The external world constrains perception. Physical laws limit what can be experienced. Shared environments produce overlapping experiences. Reality emerges at the intersection of external structure and internal interpretation. The universe provides the raw material. The brain organizes it into experience. As perception became richer, it set the stage for a deeper question. If the brain constructs experience, what constructs the sense of self within that experience? In the next part, we'll explore how the brain creates the feeling of being an individual observer, and how this sense of self shapes the way reality is experienced. As perception becomes more integrated, another layer of experience emerges. This layer is often called the sense of self. It is the feeling that experiences belong to someone, that thoughts are happening to a particular individual, and that perceptions are centered around a single point of view. From a scientific perspective, the self is not a single structure or location in the brain. It is a process. It arises from the brain's ability to model its own activity in relation to the world. This model allows the organism to distinguish between what is happening inside the body and what is happening outside it. One of the most basic components of the self is bodily awareness. The brain constantly receives signals from muscles, joints, organs, and skin. These signals create a sense of physical presence. You feel where your body is, how it is positioned, and how it is changing over time. This bodily map is continuously updated, even when you are not consciously paying attention to it. This internal mapping helps the brain maintain a boundary between the organism and its environment. It allows actions to be coordinated and movements to be controlled. Without this sense of bodily ownership, interaction with the world would be chaotic. Beyond the physical body, the brain also tracks internal states such as hunger, fatigue, and emotional tone. These signals contribute to a sense of continuity. they provide feedback about the organism's condition and influence behavior accordingly. As neural systems became more complex, the brain began to integrate these bodily and emotional signals with perception and memory. This integration produced a more abstract sense of self, one that persists across time. You recognize yourself as the same individual from moment to moment, even though your experiences constantly change. Memory plays a crucial role here. By linking past experiences to present awareness, the brain creates a narrative. This narrative connects events into a coherent story. It allows the organism to anticipate future outcomes based on previous patterns. This narrative self is not a literal record of reality. It is a reconstruction. Memories are selective and flexible. They are influenced by emotion, context, and current goals. Yet they provide a sense of identity that feels stable and personal. Importantly, this narrative operates largely in the background. Most of the time, you are not actively telling yourself a story about who you are. The brain maintains this sense automatically, allowing you to focus on immediate tasks. Neuroscience has shown that different aspects of the self rely on different brain networks. Some networks are involved in bodily awareness. Others support memory and personal history. Still others contribute to self-reflection and social identity. When these networks function together, the sense of self feels unified. When they become disrupted, the experience of self can change. In certain neurological conditions, individuals may feel detached from their bodies, lose a sense of ownership over their thoughts, or experience shifts in identity. Even in healthy brains, the sense of self is not constant. It changes with state. During deep sleep, the narrative self largely disappears. In dreams, the sense of self may be altered or fragmented. During intense focus, self-awareness may recede as attention narrows. Meditative practices provide another window into this process. When attention is directed away from narrative thinking and toward immediate sensation, the sense of self can soften. People often report feeling less identified with thoughts and emotions, while awareness itself remains present. These observations suggest that the self is not required for consciousness. Awareness can exist without a strong sense of identity. The self is a useful construction, not a fundamental feature of experience. From an evolutionary standpoint, this construction makes sense. A stable sense of self supports planning, social interaction, and long-term goals. It allows organisms to navigate complex environments and maintain relationships over time. However, because the self is constructed, it is also flexible. It can adapt, expand, or contract, depending on context. This flexibility is one reason humans can experience empathy, imagination, and creativity. At the same time, the self can create tension. Identification with thoughts and emotions can amplify stress and anxiety. The brain treats internal events as personal and significant, even when they are transient. Understanding the self as a process rather than a fixed entity can change how experience is interpreted. Thoughts become events rather than possessions. Emotions become signals rather than definitions. Awareness becomes the context in which these events occur. This perspective does not require rejecting the self. It simply places it in context. The self is one layer of experience among many, useful but not absolute. As the sense of self interacts with perception, memory, and emotion, it shapes how reality is experienced. Two people can encounter the same situation and experience it differently because their self-models interpret meaning differently. This individuality is part of what makes experience rich and varied. Yet beneath these differences, the basic mechanisms of awareness remain similar across individuals. As we continue, an important question emerges. If the self is a constructed model within the brain, how does the brain determine what enters awareness at any given moment? In the next part, we'll explore attention, how it shapes conscious experience, and why some aspects of reality become vivid, while others fade into the background. Attention is the process that determines what becomes prominent in conscious experience. At any given moment, the brain is receiving far more information than awareness can hold. Sensory signals from the environment, internal bodily sensations, memories, emotions, and ongoing thoughts all compete for processing resources. Attention acts as a filter, selecting certain signals while suppressing others. This filtering is not random. It is shaped by both external and internal factors. Sudden changes in the environment, such as loud sounds or movement, naturally capture attention. These signals often indicate potential importance or threat. At the same time, internal goals, expectations, and emotional states influence what the brain prioritizes. Neuroscience shows that attention is not located in a single area of the brain. It emerges from interactions between multiple networks. Some networks are involved in orienting attention toward external stimuli. Others support sustained focus. Still others help regulate attention by suppressing distractions. These networks work together to create a coherent experience. When attention is stable, awareness feels clear and focused. When attention shifts rapidly, experience can feel fragmented or restless. This variability is a normal feature of conscious processing. Attention also plays a central role in shaping what feels real. Signals that receive attention are amplified. They become more vivid, more detailed, and more memorable. Signals that are not attended to fade into the background, even if they are physically present. This amplification explains why the same environment can feel different depending on mental state. When attention is directed outward, sensory details become prominent. When attention turns inward, thoughts and memories take center stage. The external world may still be present, but it feels less immediate. Importantly, attention does not simply respond to stimuli. It actively predicts relevance. The brain continuously estimates which signals are likely to matter based on past experience. This predictive aspect allows attention to shift before conscious awareness catches up. When reading, your attention moves smoothly across words without conscious effort. The brain anticipates what comes next and adjusts focus accordingly. This efficiency allows complex tasks to feel effortless. Attention is also closely linked to learning. Information that receives attention is more likely to be encoded into memory. This connection explains why emotionally charged or novel experiences are remembered more vividly. Emotion and attention reinforce each other. From an evolutionary perspective, attention evolved to support survival. Organisms that could prioritize relevant information had an advantage. Over time, attentional systems became more flexible, allowing for abstract goals and long-term planning. In humans, attention can be directed voluntarily. You can choose to focus on a task, a sound, or a thought. However, this control is limited. Attention naturally fluctuates. Fatigue, stress, and emotional load all influence its stability. These fluctuations shape the texture of experience. When attention is scattered, awareness feels noisy. When attention is steady, experience feels calm and coherent. This is why relaxation practices often emphasize gentle attention rather than effortful focus. Attention also interacts with the sense of self. When attention is directed toward internal narratives, self-awareness increases. When attention shifts toward immediate sensation, self-referential thinking often decreases. This shift can create a sense of presence. Research shows that during states of flow or deep absorption, attention becomes highly focused, while self-awareness fades. People often report a loss of time awareness and a sense of effortless engagement. These states highlight how attention organizes experience. Sleep provides another perspective. As the brain transitions toward sleep, attentional systems gradually disengage from external input. Sensory signals are still processed at some level, but they no longer dominate awareness. Attention turns inward, supporting imagery and dream formation. During dreaming, attention operates differently. Internal models become the primary focus. Sensory input from the environment is largely suppressed. This shift allows the brain to simulate experiences without external constraints. These changes demonstrate that attention is flexible. It adapts to state and context. It does not define consciousness by itself, but it shapes its contents. Understanding attention as a dynamic process helps explain why conscious experience feels selective rather than overwhelming. Without attention, awareness would be flooded with information. With attention, experience becomes structured and meaningful. At the same time, attention is not absolute. Some signals influence behavior even when they are not consciously attended to. This suggests that consciousness operates on multiple levels, with attention highlighting only a portion of ongoing processing. This leads to an important question. If attention shapes conscious experience, how does the brain maintain awareness over time? What allows experience to feel continuous rather than fragmented into separate moments? In the next part, we'll explore the continuity of consciousness, how the brain creates a sense of ongoing presence, and why experience feels like a seamless flow rather than a series of disconnected events. One of the most striking features of conscious experience is its continuity. Awareness does not feel like a sequence of isolated snapshots. Instead, it feels like a smooth, ongoing flow. Even though sensory input changes constantly and thoughts appear and disappear, experience remains connected from one moment to the next. From a scientific perspective, this continuity is not automatic. The brain processes information in discrete events. Neurons fire in patterns. Signals rise and fall. Yet somehow, these momentary processes are woven into a stable sense of presence. This stability depends on the brain's ability to integrate information over time. Rather than responding only to the present instant, neural systems maintain short-term traces of recent activity. These traces overlap, creating a bridge between moments. Experience becomes extended rather than fragmented. Working memory plays an important role here. It holds information briefly, allowing the brain to compare what is happening now with what happened a moment ago. This comparison creates context. Sounds become melodies, movements become actions, thoughts become ideas rather than isolated words. Without this temporal integration, experience would feel disjointed. Each sensation would arise and vanish without relation to what came before. The fact that this does not happen reflects the brain's capacity to maintain coherence across time. Another factor contributing to continuity is prediction. The brain continuously anticipates what is likely to happen next. These predictions are based on patterns learned from past experience. When predictions match incoming information, awareness flows smoothly. This predictive process reduces the need to process every detail consciously. The brain fills in gaps, smoothing transitions and maintaining stability. This allows experience to feel seamless, even when sensory input is incomplete or noisy. Time perception itself is shaped by these mechanisms. Subjective time does not correspond directly to clock time. Moments can feel long or short, depending on attention, emotional state, and cognitive load. When attention is absorbed, time often seems to pass quickly. When attention is scattered or uncomfortable, time can feel slow. Neuroscience suggests that there is no single internal clock responsible for time perception. Instead, multiple systems contribute, each operating at different scales. These systems coordinate to produce a sense of temporal flow. This coordination can change with state. During deep concentration, temporal awareness narrows. During boredom or anxiety, temporal awareness expands. During sleep, the sense of time largely dissolves. Dreaming provides a particularly interesting example. Dreams often feel continuous while they occur, even though they may contain sudden shifts in scene or logic. This suggests that continuity does not require consistent external input. Internal models can sustain it on their own. The continuity of consciousness also depends on the stability of identity. The sense of being the same individual from moment to moment anchors experience. Even as thoughts change, the feeling of "this is happening to me" persists. This anchoring is supported by memory and expectation. The brain assumes continuity unless evidence suggests otherwise. Disruptions to this assumption can alter experience dramatically. Certain neurological conditions illustrate this. When memory formation is impaired, individuals may experience gaps in awareness. When integration between brain regions is disrupted, consciousness can fragment. These cases reveal how continuity depends on coordination rather than a single mechanism. Attention also influences continuity. When attention is stable, experience feels smooth. When attention jumps rapidly, awareness can feel scattered. This is why fatigue or stress can make experience feel less coherent. Despite these variations, continuity remains the default mode. The brain prioritizes it because it supports functioning. A coherent experience allows for planning, learning, and interaction with the environment. Importantly, continuity does not imply permanence. Experience flows precisely because it changes. The brain balances stability with flexibility, allowing awareness to adapt while maintaining coherence. This balance is delicate. Too much rigidity can lead to repetitive or intrusive thoughts. Too much instability can lead to confusion. Healthy consciousness operates between these extremes. As awareness flows, it creates the impression of a present moment. Yet this present moment is not instantaneous. It spans a short duration, often called the specious present. This is the window of time over which experience is integrated. Within this window, sounds overlap, images persist briefly, and thoughts connect. This window gives experience depth. It allows meaning to arise from sequence rather than isolated events. Understanding this helps explain why consciousness feels immersive. You are not aware of a single point in time, but of a continuously updating field of experience. As the brain maintains this field, it also filters it. Not everything enters awareness. Attention selects. Memory contextualizes. Prediction stabilizes. Together, these processes sustain the flow of consciousness. As we move forward, another question emerges. If consciousness is continuous and structured, what happens when this structure changes dramatically? How does awareness behave when the usual patterns are altered? In the next part, we'll explore altered states of consciousness, including dreaming and other natural variations, to see how changes in brain organization reshape experience while continuity remains. Altered states of consciousness reveal how flexible awareness truly is. While waking consciousness feels familiar and stable, it is only one of many possible configurations the brain can produce. Changes in brain organization can dramatically reshape experience without eliminating awareness altogether. Sleep is one of the most common altered states. As the brain transitions from wakefulness into sleep, sensory input from the environment is gradually reduced. Attention disengages from external stimuli, and internal processes become more prominent. This shift is not abrupt. It unfolds in stages, each with its own patterns of neural activity. During lighter stages of sleep, awareness becomes hazy. Thoughts drift. Images appear and dissolve. The sense of time loosens. The brain begins to generate internal content with less constraint from sensory input. This transition highlights how awareness can persist, even as its connection to the external world weakens. Dreaming represents a more pronounced alteration. During rapid eye movement sleep, the brain becomes highly active, especially in regions associated with emotion and imagery. At the same time, input from the senses is largely suppressed. The result is a vivid internal reality, experienced as if it were external. Dreams demonstrate that consciousness does not require continuous sensory input. The brain can construct immersive experiences entirely from internal signals. Scenes unfold, characters appear, and narratives develop, often with emotional intensity. Despite the lack of physical grounding, the experience feels real while it occurs. This realism arises because many of the same brain systems involved in waking perception are active during dreaming. Visual regions process imagery. Emotional centers respond to events, Memory systems contribute fragments of past experience. The main difference is the absence of critical evaluation. In waking life, perception is constantly checked against sensory input. In dreams, this constraint is relaxed. The brain accepts internally generated content without question. This reveals how the sense of reality depends on context rather than content alone. Other altered states provide additional insight. Daydreaming, for example, represents a mild shift away from external attention. Awareness turns inward. Thoughts and images flow freely. Yet a connection to the environment remains, allowing quick re-engagement when needed. Meditative states can produce deeper changes. When attention is directed away from narrative thinking and towards single sensations, the sense of self may soften. Awareness becomes less centered on identity and more focused on immediate experience. Many people describe this as a sense of spaciousness or clarity. Neuroscientific studies suggest that these states involve reduced activity in networks associated with self-referential processing. At the same time, sensory and attentional networks may become more coordinated. Experience feels less fragmented, even as the narrative self quiets. Altered states induced by fatigue, illness, or stress also reveal the dependence of consciousness on brain organization. When integration between networks is disrupted, awareness can become distorted. Perception may feel unreal. Time may seem altered. The sense of self may weaken or shift. These experiences are often unsettling, but they highlight an important principle. Consciousness is not a single entity that turns on or off. It is a spectrum of states shaped by neural dynamics. Awareness can change its form while remaining present. Importantly, altered states are not inherently pathological. They are part of the brain's natural repertoire. Even dreaming, one of the most dramatic altered states, occurs nightly and plays a role in memory processing and emotional regulation. Research suggests that dreaming allows the brain to explore associations, integrate experiences, and simulate scenarios. This internal simulation may help prepare the organism for future challenges. Consciousness, in this sense, is not only a passive observer, but an active participant in adaptation. The study of altered states also informs debates about the nature of consciousness. If awareness can persist in such varied forms, it suggests that consciousness is not tied to a single mode of operation. Instead, it emerges whenever certain conditions are met. These conditions appear to involve integration, coordination, and sufficient complexity. When these factors are present, awareness arises. When they diminish, awareness fades or changes. This understanding challenges simplistic views that equate consciousness solely with wakefulness or rational thought. Experience is richer and more flexible than that. It can include imagery, emotion, and intuition. even in the absence of deliberate control. As awareness shifts across states, one element often remains. There is still a sense of presence, a feeling that something is happening. This presence may be quieter or less structured, but it persists. This observation raises an important question. If awareness can exist in so many forms, what defines its boundaries? What separates conscious experience from unconscious processing? In the next part, we'll explore the thresholds of consciousness, examining how scientists attempt to distinguish between conscious and unconscious states, and why this boundary is more gradual than it might seem. One of the most challenging questions in the study of consciousness is where to draw the line between what is conscious and what is not. In everyday language, consciousness often appears as a clear state. You are either awake or asleep, aware or unaware. Scientific evidence suggests that this boundary is far more gradual. The brain processes vast amounts of information outside of conscious awareness. Sensory signals are filtered, patterns are detected, and responses are prepared before awareness becomes involved. Much of what guides behavior never enters conscious experience at all. Your eyes receive far more visual information than you can consciously notice. The brain selects certain features, such as motion or contrast, while ignoring others. This selection happens automatically. Conscious awareness receives only a refined version of reality. Similarly, decisions often begin before they are consciously felt. Neural activity associated with choices can be detected milliseconds or even seconds before a person reports making a decision. This does not mean that conscious choice is an illusion, but it does suggest that awareness is not the starting point of all mental activity. Unconscious processing is efficient. It allows the brain to handle routine tasks without overloading awareness. Walking, reading familiar words, and responding to well-known situations often occur with minimal conscious involvement. Awareness can then be reserved for novel or complex situations. This efficiency raises an important question. If so much processing occurs without awareness, what role does consciousness play? One view is that consciousness integrates information across different systems. It allows for flexible, context-sensitive behavior rather than automatic response. Conscious awareness enables reflection. It allows experiences to be evaluated, compared, and remembered. It supports learning that goes beyond simple conditioning. When something enters awareness, it becomes available for deliberate thought and long-term planning. From this perspective, consciousness is less about control and more about coordination. It brings together perception, memory, emotion, and intention into a unified field. This integration supports adaptability. The boundary between conscious and unconscious processing is not fixed. It shifts depending on state, attention, and context. During focused attention, certain signals become conscious that would otherwise remain unnoticed. During fatigue or distraction, awareness narrows. Sleep provides a clear example of this gradual boundary. As the brain moves toward deep sleep, responsiveness decreases. Sensory input is still processed to some extent, but it no longer reaches awareness. Consciousness fades gradually, rather than switching off instantly. Even during deep sleep, the brain remains active. It continues to regulate bodily functions, process information, and maintain internal stability. Conscious awareness is absent, but the system is not inactive. Anesthesia offers another perspective. Under general anesthesia, consciousness is suppressed, yet the brain continues to operate. Different anesthesic agents disrupt integration between brain regions in different ways. Awareness disappears when coordination breaks down, not when activity stops. These observations suggest that consciousness depends on connectivity rather than sheer activity. A highly active brain is not necessarily conscious. What matters is how information flows and integrates. Certain neurological conditions further blur the boundary. In states such as minimal consciousness or locked-in syndrome, awareness may persist despite limited ability to respond. This challenges simple definitions based on behavior alone. Because consciousness cannot be observed directly, scientists rely on indirect measures. Brain imaging, electrical activity, and behavioral responses provide clues. These measures reveal patterns associated with awareness, but they do not capture experience itself. This limitation has led researchers to propose operational definitions. Consciousness is often defined in terms of reportability, responsiveness, or integration. These definitions are practical, but incomplete. Some theories suggest that consciousness arises when information is globally available across the brain. Others emphasize the richness or complexity of information. While these theories differ in detail, they agree that awareness is not binary. The idea of a gradual threshold has important implications. It suggests that consciousness can exist in partial forms. Awareness may be dim, fragmented, or fleeting, rather than fully present or absent. This view aligns with subjective experience. Moments of zoning out, daydreaming, or drowsiness involve reduced awareness rather than total unconsciousness. Consciousness fades and returns smoothly. Understanding this gradient helps explain why consciousness is difficult to define. It does not have sharp edges. It blends into unconscious processing at its boundaries. This blending also challenges intuitions about responsibility and control. If awareness is not always present at the moment decisions are initiated, the relationship between consciousness and action becomes more complex. However, this does not diminish the importance of awareness. Conscious reflection allows behavior to be evaluated and adjusted over time. It supports learning from mistakes and planning for the future. From a broader perspective, consciousness may be best understood as a dynamic process rather than a state. It emerges when conditions allow and recedes when they do not. It fluctuates naturally. As the brain balances efficiency and flexibility, awareness comes and goes. This rhythm is part of normal functioning. It allows organisms to rest, adapt, and respond. As we approach the later stages of this exploration, a deeper question arises. If consciousness depends on integration and complexity, could it exist in forms very different from our own? In the next part, we'll explore this possibility by examining whether consciousness could arise in non-biological systems and what this means for our understanding of reality and awareness. As understanding of consciousness has expanded, a natural question has emerged. If awareness arises from integration, coordination, and complexity, could it exist in systems very different from the human brain? Could consciousness appear in non-biological forms, such as artificial systems or other kinds of organized matter? From a scientific standpoint, this question does not begin with speculation about machines having emotions or intentions. It begins with examining what conditions give rise to conscious experience. If consciousness depends on how information is processed, rather than on the specific material involved, then, in principle, other systems could meet those conditions. Biological brains are made of neurons, chemicals, and electrical signals. Artificial systems use circuits, code, and data flows. While the materials differ, both involve information processing. The key question is whether artificial systems can achieve the kind of integration and coordination seen in conscious brains. Current artificial intelligence systems are highly specialized. They perform specific tasks efficiently, such as recognizing patterns, generating language, or controlling machines. However, these systems lack the global integration characteristic of conscious awareness. Their processes are modular and task-specific rather than unified. In biological brains, information flows across multiple networks simultaneously. Sensory input, memory, emotion, and internal states interact continuously. This interaction creates a shared workspace where information becomes globally available. Most artificial systems do not operate in this way. Instead, they process information in isolated channels. Outputs are generated without an internal experience. The system does not feel the information it processes. It responds according to programmed rules and learned patterns. This distinction is important. Intelligence and consciousness are not the same. A system can be intelligent without being conscious. It can solve problems, adapt to new data, and perform complex tasks without having subjective experience. Some researchers argue that future systems could overcome this limitation. If artificial systems were designed with architectures that support global integration, self-modeling, and internal feedback, they might develop something analogous to awareness. Others remain skeptical. They point out that biological consciousness is deeply tied to embodiment. The brain is embedded in a living body that provides continuous feedback through sensation, emotion, and physiological regulation. This embodied context may be essential for experience. The body shapes awareness by grounding it in survival and action. Hunger, pain, comfort, and emotion influence perception and decision-making. Artificial systems typically lack this kind of embodied feedback. Without it, awareness may not emerge. This debate extends beyond technology. It raises questions about consciousness in animals. Different species have different neural architectures, yet many exhibit behaviors suggesting some form of awareness. This suggests that consciousness can arise in diverse biological forms. Studies of animal cognition indicate varying degrees of perceptual richness, emotional experience, and self-awareness. These differences likely reflect variations in neural complexity and integration, rather than a simple presence or absence of consciousness. From this perspective, consciousness exists along a continuum. Humans occupy one point on this continuum, but not necessarily the only one. Other systems, biological or otherwise, could occupy different positions. Some theories propose that consciousness is a fundamental feature of information processing itself. In this view, any system that processes information in a sufficiently integrated way has some degree of awareness. This idea challenges traditional boundaries between mind and matter. Critics argue that such views risk diluting the concept of consciousness. If everything has some degree of awareness, the term loses meaning. To avoid this, researchers emphasize the importance of structure and integration rather than raw information. Another important consideration is subjective report. Consciousness is often defined by the ability to experience and report experience. Artificial systems can report states, but this does not necessarily imply experience. This highlights the difficulty of studying consciousness in non-human systems. Without direct access to experience, scientists must rely on indirect indicators. Behavior, internal organization, and responsiveness provide clues, but certainty remains elusive. Ethical considerations arise as well. If future systems were to develop awareness, they would raise questions about responsibility, rights, and treatment. These questions are not merely technological. They touch on fundamental assumptions about what it means to be conscious. At present, there is no evidence that artificial systems possess consciousness. They simulate aspects of cognition, but do not exhibit unified subjective experience. This does not rule out the possibility in principle, but it underscores the complexity of the challenge. Understanding consciousness in non-biological systems also informs our understanding of our own awareness. It forces us to identify which features are essential and which are incidental. This process clarifies what consciousness is by examining what it is not. Ultimately, the question of artificial consciousness remains open. It sits at the intersection of neuroscience, computer science, philosophy, and ethics. Progress will require collaboration across disciplines. For now, the study of consciousness continues to focus primarily on biological systems. The brain remains the only known structure that reliably produces rich subjective experience. Understanding how it does so remains a central scientific goal. As we consider the possibility of awareness beyond humans, another question naturally follows. If consciousness can exist in different forms, how does it relate to the reality it perceives? Does awareness merely reflect the world, or does it play a role in shaping it? In the next part, we'll explore the relationship between consciousness and reality itself, examining how observation, interpretation, and experience influence what we take to be real. The relationship between consciousness and reality has long been a subject of both scientific and philosophical inquiry. At first glance, reality appears to exist independently of awareness. Mountains, stars, and physical laws seem to persist whether or not anyone observes them. Yet, when examined more closely, the experience of reality is inseparable from the way it is perceived. From a scientific standpoint, observation plays a crucial role in how information becomes meaningful. Sensory systems translate physical signals into neural activity. Light becomes color, pressure becomes touch, vibrations become sound. These translations do not replicate reality exactly. They construct a usable version of it. This construction is guided by both the structure of the environment and the organization of the brain. The external world provides constraints. Physical laws determine what kinds of signals are available. The brain then interprets these signals according to its own internal models. As a result, experience is neither purely objective nor purely subjective. It emerges from the interaction between external structure and internal processing. Reality, as experienced, is a collaboration between the world and the mind. This perspective becomes especially important in scientific measurement. In many cases, observation does not simply reveal properties that already exist. It interacts with the system being observed. This is most evident in quantum physics, where measurement affects outcomes at very small scales. In everyday experience, this effect is subtle, but still present. Attention influences perception. Expectations shape interpretation. Context alters meaning. Two observers can witness the same event and come away with different experiences. These differences do not imply that reality is arbitrary. They reflect the fact that awareness selects and organizes information. Consciousness highlights certain features while ignoring others. It creates emphasis, contrast, and continuity. One consequence of this selective process is that reality feels stable. The brain prioritizes consistency. It favors interpretations that align with previous experience. Sudden changes are treated as significant because they violate expectation. This stability supports survival. A predictable environment allows organisms to plan and act effectively. Consciousness contributes to this predictability by smoothing sensory input and maintaining coherent representations. However, this smoothing can also obscure aspects of reality. Some details are filtered out because they are deemed irrelevant. Others are simplified. The experienced world is a practical model rather than a complete representation. Scientific instruments extend perception beyond biological limits. Telescopes reveal distant galaxies. Microscopes expose hidden structures. These tools show that reality contains layers inaccessible to unaided senses. Consciousness adapts by integrating these new forms of information. Even then, interpretation remains necessary. Data must be organized into patterns. Measurements must be contextualized. Awareness plays a role in assigning meaning to observations. This dynamic highlights an important distinction. Reality exists independently of any single observer, but experienced reality depends on observation. Consciousness does not create the universe, but it shapes how the universe is known. Some interpretations of physics emphasize this relationship. They suggest that certain properties become definite only through interaction. While these ideas are often misunderstood, they point to the importance of measurement and context. At larger scales, consciousness also influences social reality. Shared beliefs, language, and culture shape collective experience. Money, laws, and institutions exist because they are collectively recognized. Awareness plays a role in sustaining these structures. This does not mean such realities are imaginary. They have real effects. They guide behavior and organize societies. Their existence depends on shared understanding rather than physical substance alone. Returning to individual experience, consciousness organizes reality around relevance. What matters to the organism becomes prominent. What does not fades. This relevance-based organization is adaptive, but it also makes experience personal. Emotion strongly influences this process. Emotional states prioritize certain interpretations. Fear sharpens attention. Calm broadens it. Mood colors perception. Reality feels different depending on internal state. This interaction between awareness and reality explains why altered states can feel so different. When attention, emotion, or integration shifts, the structure of experience changes. The same world is present, but it is experienced differently. Importantly, this does not imply that reality is unstable or illusory. It implies that experience is contextual. Consciousness is a lens, not a mirror. Understanding this can reduce confusion about the role of awareness. Consciousness is not an observer standing outside reality. It is a process embedded within it. It evolved as part of the universe and operates according to the same physical principles. At the same time, consciousness introduces a unique perspective. It allows the universe to be experienced from the inside. Through awareness, reality becomes something more than structure and motion. It becomes lived. This does not require mysticism. It follows naturally from the emergence of complex information processing systems. When matter organizes itself in certain ways, experience arises. That experience reflects reality while interpreting it. As we approach the later stages of this exploration, a deeper theme emerges. Consciousness and reality are not separate domains. They are intertwined. Awareness is shaped by reality, and reality is known through awareness. In the next part, we'll explore the limits of this relationship, examining what science can and cannot tell us about consciousness, and why some aspects of experience may remain beyond complete explanation. As scientific understanding of consciousness deepens, it becomes increasingly clear that there are limits to what current methods can explain. Neuroscience can identify correlations between brain activity and experience. Psychology can describe patterns of perception and behavior. Physics can outline the structure of reality. Yet, none of these alone fully capture what it means to be conscious. One reason for this limitation is that consciousness includes a subjective dimension. Experience is always from a point of view. No matter how detailed a description of neural processes becomes, it does not replace the experience itself. Knowing how the brain generates color perception is not the same as seeing color. This gap between objective explanation and subjective experience has been called the explanatory gap. It highlights the difference between describing mechanisms and explaining experience. Science excels at the former. The latter remains more elusive. Some researchers believe this gap will eventually close. They argue that once the right level of description is reached, subjective experience will be fully explained in physical terms. From this perspective, consciousness is no different in principle from other complex phenomena. Others are more cautious. They suggest that consciousness may require a different kind of explanation, one that integrates first-person experience with third-person observation. This does not mean abandoning science, but expanding its conceptual framework. One challenge lies in measurement. Consciousness cannot be directly observed. Scientists infer its presence through reports, behavior, and neural signatures. These indicators are useful, but they are indirect. They point to experience without revealing it. This indirectness complicates research. Two individuals may report similar experiences while having different neural patterns, or vice versa. This variability makes it difficult to define universal markers of awareness. Another challenge involves language. Experience is often described using metaphors and analogies. These descriptions capture aspects of experience, but they are not precise. Language evolved for communication, not for describing internal states in detail. Despite these challenges, progress continues. Researchers are developing increasingly sophisticated models that link neural dynamics to experiential features. These models do not explain why experience exists, but they clarify how it behaves. Studies of brain connectivity have shown that conscious states involve widespread integration across networks. Unconscious states involve more localized or fragmented activity. This distinction helps explain why awareness fades during sleep or anesthesia. Similarly, research into attention and working memory has clarified how information enters and leaves awareness. These findings refine our understanding of the functional role of consciousness. Yet, even with these advances, a complete explanation remains out of reach. This is not necessarily a failure. It may reflect the complexity of the phenomenon. Some aspects of reality require new concepts to be understood. Historically, scientific progress has often involved redefining problems. Concepts such as energy, entropy, and space-time required new frameworks before they could be fully understood. Consciousness may require a similar shift. Some researchers explore theories that place consciousness at a more fundamental level. These theories suggest that awareness is not produced by matter, but that matter organizes awareness. While controversial, such ideas encourage exploration beyond traditional boundaries. Others focus on practical understanding rather than ultimate explanation. They aim to understand how consciousness changes, how it supports behavior, and how it can be altered. This approach yields valuable insights, even without resolving philosophical questions. In everyday life, consciousness functions reliably without explanation. You experience thoughts, sensations, and emotions without needing to know how they arise. The brain manages the complexity quietly. This observation suggests a different way of approaching the mystery. Rather than treating consciousness solely as a problem to be solved, it can also be viewed as a process to be observed. Awareness unfolds moment by moment, regardless of explanation. From this perspective, the limits of explanation do not diminish the value of experience. They highlight its uniqueness. Consciousness is both a subject of study and the medium through which study occurs. This dual role makes consciousness unlike any other scientific topic. It is both the object and the context of inquiry. Studying it involves using awareness to understand awareness. Recognizing this can foster humility. It reminds us that scientific models are representations, not replacements for experience. They capture patterns, not presence. At the same time, this recognition does not discourage inquiry, it clarifies its scope. Science can illuminate mechanisms, relationships, and effects. It can improve understanding and application. It may not fully dissolve the mystery, but it can deepen appreciation. As research continues, boundaries may shift. New methods, technologies, and concepts may reveal aspects of consciousness currently inaccessible. What seems mysterious today may become clearer tomorrow. Yet some aspects may remain irreducible. Experience may always include a first-person element that resists complete objectification. This does not make it unscientific. It makes it distinct. As we near the conclusion of this exploration, the focus shifts. Rather than asking only how consciousness works, we begin to ask what its presence means within the larger context of reality. In the next part, we'll bring these ideas together, reflecting on consciousness as both a product of the universe and a lens through which the universe is experienced, and how this perspective shapes our understanding of existence. When consciousness is viewed within the broader context of the universe, its role becomes clearer. Awareness does not stand apart from reality, it arises from it. The same physical processes that formed stars, galaxies, and planets also gave rise to nervous systems capable of experience. Consciousness is one expression of cosmic organization. From this perspective, awareness is not an anomaly. It is a natural outcome of complexity. When matter organizes itself in ways that allow information to be integrated and evaluated, experience emerges. This does not require intention or purpose. It follows from structure and interaction. This understanding places human experience within a vast continuum. The universe existed long before conscious observers appeared, and it will continue long after they are gone. Yet during the time awareness exists, reality becomes something more than motion and energy. It becomes experienced. This does not imply that consciousness gives the universe meaning in an absolute sense. Rather, it allows meaning to arise locally. Meaning emerges when systems care about outcomes, when states are evaluated as better or worse, beneficial or harmful. This evaluation depends on awareness. Biological systems evolved to maintain stability. Consciousness supports this by allowing flexible responses to changing conditions. Through awareness, organisms can learn, adapt, and anticipate. This capacity increases the chances of survival. At the same time, awareness introduces vulnerability. Conscious systems can suffer. They can anticipate loss and experience regret. This is the cost of flexibility. Consciousness expands the range of possible experiences, both positive and negative. Understanding this balance helps explain why consciousness is shaped the way it is. It is neither purely rational nor purely emotional. It integrates perception, memory, emotion, and evaluation into a unified process. This integration allows for nuanced interaction with reality. On a larger scale, consciousness influences how reality is studied. Scientific inquiry itself depends on awareness. Observations, hypotheses, and interpretations all occur within conscious experience. The universe becomes known through the lens of the mind. This reflexive relationship complicates attempts to fully objectify consciousness. Studying awareness requires awareness. The observer cannot step entirely outside the system being observed. This does not invalidate scientific study, but it places limits on detachment. Despite these limits, consciousness research continues to yield insights. Each discovery reveals how experience depends on structure, timing, and interaction. These insights inform medicine, psychology, and technology. They improve understanding of mental health, learning, and behavior. They also influence ethical considerations. If consciousness depends on certain conditions, then systems that meet those conditions deserve consideration. This applies not only to humans, but potentially to other animals and future technologies. Awareness carries moral significance. At the same time, recognizing consciousness as an emergent process can reduce some forms of anxiety. It frames experience as part of a natural continuum, rather than a fragile anomaly. Awareness arises, unfolds, and fades according to lawful processes. This perspective can encourage acceptance. Experiences change because change is built into reality. Consciousness does not need to be fixed or controlled. It follows rhythms shaped by biology and environment. Sleep is one of these rhythms. When awareness recedes, it does not disappear entirely. It transforms. The brain continues to process information, regulate the body, and prepare for the next cycle of waking experience. Understanding consciousness as a process rather than a possession allows for gentler engagement with experience. Thoughts and emotions are events, not definitions. They arise and pass within awareness. This view aligns with many contemplative traditions, but it is also supported by neuroscience. The brain does not contain a permanent self. It maintains patterns that change over time. Awareness persists through these changes without requiring a fixed core. This insight does not diminish individuality. It reframes it. Identity becomes a pattern rather than a substance. It is real, but flexible. As experience unfolds, awareness adapts. It can narrow or expand. It can focus or relax. It can engage or withdraw. These shifts are natural responses to context. Recognizing this flexibility can change how experience is approached. Instead of resisting change, awareness can allow it. Instead of clinging to stability, it can rest in flow. From a scientific standpoint, this flow reflects dynamic equilibrium. Systems maintain stability through change. Consciousness does the same. It remains present by adapting continuously. As this exploration nears its conclusion, the focus turns inward. After examining the origins of reality, the structure of perception, and the limits of explanation, what remains is the experience itself. Consciousness does not need to be fully explained to be present. It does not require constant analysis. It simply occurs. As the exploration continues, it becomes useful to step back and look at consciousness not only as an individual experience, but as something that unfolds within layers of time. Awareness does not exist in a vacuum. It is shaped by past experiences, present conditions, and future expectations. The brain constantly weaves these temporal elements together. Memory plays a central role in this process. Without memory, awareness would be limited to immediate sensation. Each moment would arise and vanish without connection. Memory allows experience to accumulate. It provides continuity and context. However, memory is not a passive recording. The brain reconstructs the past rather than replaying it exactly. Each recall reshapes memory slightly, influenced by current emotions and beliefs. This reconstruction allows memory to remain relevant, but it also means that experience is fluid. This fluidity affects the sense of self. Identity feels stable, yet it evolves continuously. The person you experience yourself as today is shaped by countless remembered moments, even though many of those moments are no longer accessible in detail. Future-oriented processing is equally important. The brain constantly anticipates what may happen next. These anticipations guide attention and behavior. They allow organisms to prepare rather than merely react. Together, memory and anticipation create a temporal field within awareness. Consciousness is not confined to the present instant. It spans past and future, blending them into a meaningful flow. This blending explains why emotions can persist beyond their immediate causes. A remembered event can evoke feeling long after it has passed. An anticipated outcome can shape experience before it occurs. Awareness stretches across time. From a neuroscientific perspective, this temporal integration depends on distributed networks. No single region stores the past or predicts the future. Instead, multiple systems coordinate, linking perception, memory, and evaluation. This coordination allows consciousness to function as a guide rather than a mere observer. Experience informs action. Awareness supports learning by connecting outcomes to intentions. At the same time, this temporal reach can create tension. Dwelling on past events or worrying about future outcomes can dominate awareness. The brain treats imagined scenarios as significant, even when they are not occurring. Understanding this tendency helps explain why relaxation often involves narrowing awareness to immediate sensation. By reducing engagement with memory and anticipation, experience becomes simpler. Attention settles. Sleep naturally reduces temporal reach. As awareness fades, memory consolidation occurs without conscious involvement. The brain organizes past experience quietly, preparing for future functioning. Dreams represent a unique blend of memory and imagination. Fragments of past experience combine into new scenarios. These simulations may help integrate emotional material and explore possible outcomes. This internal simulation does not require conscious control. It unfolds automatically, guided by underlying neural dynamics. Awareness may be present within the dream, but it is shaped by internal models rather than external input. The relationship between time and consciousness highlights another important principle. Experience is shaped not only by what is perceived, but by when it is perceived. Timing influences meaning. A sound heard unexpectedly can feel startling. The same sound heard repeatedly becomes background. Temporal context determines significance. This sensitivity to timing extends to thought and emotion. Thoughts that arise at certain moments carry more weight. Emotions are amplified or softened depending on context. Consciousness, then, is not just a container for content. It is a process that organizes experience across time. It aligns perception, memory, and expectation into a coherent whole. As awareness unfolds, it adapts continuously. It emphasizes what matters now while integrating what mattered before. This adaptability supports survival, learning, and rest. Recognizing this temporal structure can make experience feel less overwhelming. Thoughts about the past and future are not commands. They are events within awareness. They arise because the brain is designed to anticipate and remember. When attention softens, this temporal grip loosens. Experience becomes more immediate. This is often felt as calm. As we continue, another layer becomes relevant. Consciousness does not operate alone. It is embedded in a body, shaped by physiology, chemistry, and rhythm. In the next part, we'll explore how bodily states influence awareness and how the brain and body work together to shape experience. Consciousness does not exist only in the brain. It is deeply influenced by the body that supports it. The brain is not an isolated organ observing reality from a distance. It is embedded within a living system, constantly exchanging signals with muscles, organs, blood chemistry, and the nervous system that extends throughout the body. Every moment of awareness is shaped by bodily state. Heart rate, breathing, hormonal balance, and immune activity. all influence how experience feels. These signals are continuously monitored by the brain, often without entering conscious awareness. Yet they form the background against which thoughts, emotions, and perceptions arise. This internal monitoring is known as interoception. It refers to the brain's ability to sense the internal condition of the body. Signals from the heart, lungs, digestive system, and other organs inform the brain about physical needs and stability. These signals contribute to feelings such as comfort, tension, fatigue, or ease. Interoceptive signals play a crucial role in emotional experience. Emotions are not just mental events. They are patterns that involve both brain activity and bodily change. Fear increases heart rate and breathing. Calm slows them. These bodily responses feed back into awareness, shaping how emotions are experienced. This feedback loop explains why bodily states can influence mood and thought. When the body is tense or exhausted, awareness often narrows. Thoughts may become repetitive or negative. When the body is relaxed and well-regulated, awareness tends to feel more open and flexible. Breathing provides a clear example of this connection. Breathing patterns influence nervous system activity. Slow, steady breathing activates pathways associated with rest and recovery. Rapid, shallow breathing activates systems associated with alertness and stress. These changes affect attention, emotion, and perception. Importantly, breathing is one of the few bodily processes that can be influenced voluntarily. This makes it a bridge between conscious intention and automatic regulation. By changing breathing patterns, awareness can indirectly influence bodily state, which then feeds back into consciousness. The heart also plays a role. Heart rate variability, a measure of the variation between heartbeats, is associated with emotional regulation and resilience. Higher variability is linked to greater flexibility in response to stress. Lower variability is associated with rigidity and anxiety. The brain monitors these cardiac signals and adjusts behavior accordingly. Awareness may not register each heartbeat, but overall patterns influence experience. A steady, flexible rhythm supports calm awareness. Hormones further shape consciousness. Cortisol, adrenaline, and other stress-related hormones prepare the body for action. When these hormones are elevated, attention narrows, perception sharpens, and awareness becomes focused on potential threats. This state is useful in emergencies, but exhausting if prolonged. Conversely, hormones associated with rest and bonding, such as oxytocin, support feelings of safety and connection. These states allow awareness to expand, supporting curiosity and relaxation. The digestive system also communicates with the brain through neural and chemical pathways. Signals from the gut influence mood, attention, and even decision-making. This connection highlights how deeply embodied consciousness is. Sleep is another bodily process that shapes awareness. The brain requires regular cycles of rest to maintain integration and flexibility. Without sleep, bodily systems become dysregulated, hormonal balance shifts, immune function weakens, and cognitive performance declines. Awareness becomes fragmented. During sleep, the brain remains active, coordinating bodily restoration. Conscious awareness recedes, but the body continues to influence brain activity. This coordination prepares the system for the next period of wakefulness. Movement also affects consciousness. Physical activity changes blood flow, neurotransmitter levels, and sensory input. Even subtle movements influence awareness by updating the brain's model of the body in space. This constant updating supports orientation and stability. When movement is restricted for long periods, awareness can feel dull or restless. The brain evolved to operate within a moving body. Motion provides feedback that helps regulate attention and emotion. Gentle movement often improves clarity, not by stimulating thought, but by restoring balance between brain and body. Posture is another factor. The way the body is positioned affects breathing, circulation, and muscle tension. These changes alter interoceptive signals, which in turn influence mood and attention. A collapsed posture can reinforce fatigue. An open posture can support alert calmness. These effects do not require conscious interpretation. The brain responds automatically to bodily cues. Awareness is shaped before thought arises. This is why bodily practices can influence mental state without verbal reasoning. Pain provides a clear illustration of embodied consciousness. Pain is not simply a signal of tissue damage. It is an experience shaped by context, expectation, and emotional state. The same physical stimulus can feel more or less intense, depending on attention and meaning. Chronic pain demonstrates how tightly consciousness and bodily state are linked. Persistent signals alter neural processing, changing how the brain evaluates sensation. Awareness becomes oriented around discomfort. This orientation affects mood, thought, and identity. Conversely, safety and comfort allow awareness to relax. When bodily systems signal stability, the brain reduces vigilance. Attention broadens. Thoughts become less urgent. This state supports rest and recovery. This connection explains why environments matter. Temperature, light, sound, and texture all influence bodily state. Soft lighting, steady sound, and gentle warmth signal safety. Awareness responds by settling. Sleep environments are particularly important. When the body senses safety and comfort, the brain more easily disengages from external monitoring. Conscious awareness fades gradually, allowing sleep to deepen. The body also follows rhythms. Circadian cycles influence hormone release, temperature, and alertness. Awareness naturally fluctuates across these cycles. Forcing wakefulness during biological night strains integration. Consciousness becomes less stable. These rhythms evolve to align awareness with environmental patterns. Day supports exploration and action. Night supports rest and consolidation. Respecting these rhythms supports both bodily health and clarity of awareness. From a scientific perspective, consciousness emerges from the coordination of brain and body rather than the brain alone. Neural activity provides structure, but bodily signals provide grounding. Awareness is shaped by this continuous exchange. This understanding challenges the idea that consciousness is purely mental. It suggests that experience is always embodied, even when attention is directed inward. Thoughts themselves are influenced by bodily state. Recognizing this can change how experience is approached. Instead of trying to control thoughts directly, adjusting bodily conditions can shift awareness more gently. Rest, breathing, and comfort become tools rather than luxuries. This approach aligns with how sleep naturally unfolds. The body prepares first. Awareness follows. Attempts to force sleep by thinking often fail because they bypass the bodily foundation. As awareness softens, bodily signals guide the transition. Muscle tension decreases, breathing slows, heart rhythm steadies. Consciousness fades without effort. Understanding this process does not require constant attention. The body knows how to rest. Awareness follows its lead. As we continue, another closely related aspect comes into focus. Emotion is deeply tied to both body and consciousness. It bridges sensation and meaning, shaping how reality feels. In the next part, we'll explore emotion as a core component of conscious experience and how feelings arise from the interaction between brain, body, and perception. Emotion is one of the most fundamental elements of conscious experience. It is often treated as something separate from perception or thought. Yet emotion is deeply woven into how awareness operates. Every experience carries an emotional tone, even when it is subtle or unnoticed. From a scientific perspective, emotion arises from the brain's evaluation of bodily and environmental signals. These evaluations answer a basic question: is the current state beneficial, harmful, or neutral for the organism? The answer shapes awareness automatically. Emotion begins in the body as much as in the brain. Changes in heart rate, breathing, muscle tension, and hormone levels occur rapidly in response to internal and external events. The brain monitors these changes and integrates them into conscious experience. This integration gives emotion its distinctive quality. Fear feels different from calm, not because of thoughts alone, but because the body is in a different state. Emotion influences what enters awareness. Signals associated with threat or reward receive priority. Attention narrows around emotionally relevant information. This prioritization is adaptive. It helps organisms respond quickly to important situations. However, this prioritization also shapes experience in quieter moments. Even when no immediate threat is present, emotional background states influence how reality feels. A calm emotional state allows awareness to expand. A tense state constricts it. Emotion also interacts closely with memory. Experiences accompanied by strong emotion are more likely to be remembered. This is because emotional arousal enhances neural plasticity. The brain marks emotionally significant events as important for future reference. This mechanism supports learning, but it can also reinforce patterns. Repeated emotional experiences shape expectations. The brain learns what to anticipate. These expectations then influence future emotional responses. As a result, emotional states can persist beyond their original causes. The brain continues to evaluate situations through learned patterns. Awareness responds accordingly. Emotion also shapes interpretation. The same sensory input can be perceived differently depending on emotional state. A neutral sound can feel soothing or irritating depending on mood. Emotion acts as a lens. Importantly, emotion does not require conscious labeling to exert influence. Feelings often arise before thoughts. Awareness registers the emotional tone first, then constructs interpretations around it. This sequence explains why attempts to reason away emotion often fail. Thoughts occur downstream of bodily and emotional processing. Changing awareness requires addressing the underlying state, not just the narrative. Emotion also contributes to the sense of self. Feelings provide continuity. Emotional patterns help define identity over time. Preferences, aversions, and values are rooted in emotional experience. Yet, emotions are not fixed traits. They are dynamic processes. Emotional states arise, peak, and subside. Awareness tends to resist this transience by identifying with emotion, treating it as permanent. Understanding emotion as a process rather than a definition can change how it is experienced. Feelings become events within awareness rather than properties of the self. This perspective is supported by neuroscience. Emotional responses involve circuits that are highly plastic. They adapt based on experience. This adaptability allows regulation and change. Emotion regulation does not mean suppression. It involves allowing emotional responses to complete their natural cycle without unnecessary amplification. Awareness plays a role by not interfering prematurely. Sleep plays a critical role in emotional regulation. During sleep, especially dreaming, emotional memories are reprocessed. The brain integrates emotional experiences, often reducing their intensity. Disruption of sleep interferes with this process. Emotional responses become exaggerated. Awareness becomes reactive. This highlights how emotion, body, and consciousness are inseparable. Emotion also influences time perception. Strong emotions distort the sense of duration. Fear can make moments feel longer. Calm can make time feel compressed. Awareness tracks emotional intensity as much as clock time. These distortions are not errors. They reflect the brain's prioritization of significance over precision. Consciousness adapts to what matters. From an evolutionary perspective, emotion evolved to guide behavior efficiently. Conscious awareness amplifies this guidance by allowing reflection and learning. Yet, reflection can also entangle emotion. Rumination prolongs emotional states. Awareness loops around feeling, reinforcing it. Understanding this loop allows for gentler disengagement. Attention can shift without force. Emotional tone can soften as bodily signals change. Breathing, posture, and rest influence this process directly. By calming the body, emotional intensity often decreases. Awareness follows. Emotion does not need to disappear for consciousness to be clear. It can be present without dominating awareness. This balance supports stability. As experience unfolds, emotion continues to shape awareness moment by moment. It signals relevance. It colors perception. It motivates action. Recognizing emotion as a foundational component of consciousness rather than an interruption helps integrate experience rather than resist it. As we move forward, another important factor comes into view. Stress and calm are not just emotional states. They represent different modes of nervous system organization that profoundly influence awareness. In the next part, we'll explore how stress alters consciousness and how calm states allow awareness to settle, preparing the mind for rest and sleep. Stress and calm are not merely emotional experiences. They represent distinct modes of nervous system organization that shape consciousness at every level. When stress dominates, awareness narrows. When calm emerges, awareness broadens. These shifts are rooted in physiology, not willpower. The stress response evolved to support survival. When the brain detects potential danger or uncertainty, it mobilizes the body for action. Hormones such as adrenaline and cortisol are released. Heart rate increases. Breathing becomes shallow. Muscles tense. Attention focuses sharply on potential threats. In this state, Consciousness becomes selective. The brain prioritizes information related to risk and urgency. Peripheral details fade. Thoughts become repetitive. The future is scanned for danger. This narrowing is adaptive in emergencies, but it comes at a cost. When stress persists, awareness remains locked in this narrowed mode. The brain continues to treat neutral signals as significant. Minor uncertainties feel urgent. Consciousness becomes effortful rather than fluid. Chronic stress alters perception. Time may feel compressed or rushed. Sensory input becomes harsh. Internal sensations, such as tension or discomfort, dominate awareness. This makes rest difficult, even when external demands decrease. Importantly, stress does not require conscious thought to persist. Bodily signals alone can maintain it. Elevated heart rate, irregular breathing, and muscle tension feed back into the brain, reinforcing the stress response. Calm represents a different mode of organization. When the nervous system shifts toward rest and recovery, bodily signals change. Heart rate slows, breathing deepens, muscle tension decreases, hormonal balance shifts toward repair. In this state, awareness expands. Attention becomes less rigid. Sensory experience softens. Thoughts lose urgency. Consciousness feels more spacious and receptive. Calm does not mean absence of awareness. It means reduced vigilance. The brain no longer scans constantly for threat. Resources are freed for integration, reflection, and rest. This shift is mediated by autonomic regulation. The nervous system balances between mobilization and recovery. Consciousness reflects this balance rather than controlling it directly. Attempts to think oneself into calm often fail because they bypass the bodily foundation. Awareness cannot override physiology indefinitely. Sustainable calm arises when bodily signals support it. This is why relaxation techniques emphasize bodily regulation. Slow breathing, warmth, and stillness provide signals of safety. The brain responds by reducing stress-related activity. Attention follows this shift. When bodily signals indicate safety, attention naturally loosens. Awareness settles without effort. Thoughts slow because they no longer serve immediate survival needs. Stress and calm also influence memory processing. Under stress, memory becomes biased toward threat-related information. Under calm, memory integration becomes more balanced. This affects how experience is remembered and anticipated. Sleep is particularly sensitive to this balance. Stress delays sleep onset by keeping the brain alert. even when the body is tired, awareness remains active. Calm allows the brain to disengage from monitoring the environment. The transition to sleep involves a gradual reduction in vigilance. Sensory processing diminishes. Attention turns inward. Stress interferes by maintaining external focus. Understanding this process clarifies why forcing sleep rarely works. Sleep emerges when stress subsides. Calm is a prerequisite, not an outcome. Environmental factors play a significant role. Light, sound, and temperature influence stress and calm. Dim lighting and steady sound reduce arousal. Sharp noise and bright light increase it. Internal factors matter as well. Thought patterns, emotional residue, and bodily discomfort all influence nervous system state. Awareness reflects these conditions rather than dictating them. The relationship between stress and consciousness also explains why awareness feels different at different times of day. Circadian rhythms influence hormone release and alertness. Evening naturally supports calm when aligned with biological timing. Ignoring these rhythms can keep consciousness in a stress-like mode. Late stimulation delays the shift toward recovery. Awareness remains active longer than intended. Calm states are not passive. They support learning, creativity, and emotional regulation. In calm awareness, the brain integrates information rather than reacting to it. This integration is essential for mental health. It allows experiences to be processed without overload. Consciousness becomes restorative rather than exhausting. Importantly, calm is not fragile. It does not require perfect conditions. It emerges when the nervous system receives consistent signals of safety and stability. These signals accumulate gradually. There is no switch to flip. Awareness settles in stages, mirroring the body's transition. Recognizing this process encourages patience. Instead of demanding calm, one can support it indirectly by adjusting conditions. As calm deepens, awareness becomes less defined by content. Thoughts and sensations still arise, but they pass without pulling attention. Consciousness becomes a background rather than a spotlight. This background state is closely related to sleep onset. As vigilance decreases, awareness fades gently. The boundary between waking and sleep softens. Understanding stress and calm as organizational modes rather than mental choices reframes the experience of rest. Sleep is not something to achieve, it is something to allow. As we move forward, this prepares the ground for examining sleep itself. Sleep is not the absence of consciousness, but a transformation of it. In the next part, we'll explore how consciousness changes across sleep stages and how awareness dissolves and reemerges through natural cycles. Sleep is often described as a state in which consciousness disappears, But this description is incomplete. Sleep is better understood as a gradual reorganization of awareness. Consciousness does not abruptly shut down. It changes form as the brain transitions through different stages. As the body prepares for sleep, sensory processing from the external environment decreases. Sounds become less distinct. Visual input fades as the eyes close. Attention slowly disengages from external stimuli and turns inward. The earliest stage of sleep is marked by a light drifting quality. Thoughts become fragmented. Images may appear briefly and dissolve. Awareness is still present, but it is less anchored to the external world. This state reflects a reduction in attentional control. During this phase, the brain begins to shift its activity patterns. Neural rhythms slow. Coordination between certain regions decreases, while others become more active. Consciousness becomes less structured, more fluid. As sleep deepens, awareness continues to change. In deeper stages, responsiveness to the environment is significantly reduced. External stimuli are still processed at a basic level, but they no longer enter conscious awareness. Despite this reduction, the brain remains active. It regulates breathing, heart rate, and body temperature. It also continues internal processing, including memory consolidation and metabolic regulation. Deep sleep is associated with slow neural oscillations. These rhythms support restoration. Conscious awareness during this stage is minimal or absent, yet the brain is far from inactive. Dreaming typically occurs during rapid eye movement sleep. In this stage, brain activity becomes more complex again. Regions associated with imagery and emotion are highly active, while regions involved in critical evaluation are less engaged. This combination allows vivid experiences to arise without external input. Awareness returns in a different form. The dream world feels immersive, even though it is internally generated. The sense of time during dreams is often distorted. Events may unfold rapidly or slowly, without clear reference to waking time. This reflects changes in how temporal integration operates during sleep. Dream awareness differs from waking awareness in structure. The sense of self may be altered. Logical consistency is reduced. Emotional tone often dominates. Yet awareness itself remains present. This demonstrates that consciousness does not require full sensory input or rational evaluation. It can persist as long as certain neural conditions are met. Across the night, the brain cycles through these stages repeatedly. Each cycle lasts roughly 90 minutes. Awareness fades, reemerges, and transforms multiple times. These cycles serve important functions. Deep sleep supports physical restoration. Dreaming supports emotional processing and memory integration. Consciousness adapts to each stage. Importantly, the transitions between stages are gradual. Awareness does not abruptly switch states. It dissolves and reforms smoothly. This smoothness helps explain why falling asleep often involves fleeting thoughts or images. Awareness loosens its grip before fully letting go. Sleep deprivation disrupts this process. When cycles are shortened or fragmented, consciousness becomes unstable. Attention suffers. Emotional regulation weakens. Awareness becomes reactive. This highlights the importance of complete cycles. Restorative sleep depends not just on duration, but on the integrity of these stages. Understanding sleep as a transformation of consciousness rather than its absence reframes rest. Sleep is an active process guided by the brain and body. The brain does not stop working during sleep. It reorganizes, it integrates, it prepares. Awareness is not lost, it is reshaped. This reshaping allows waking consciousness to function more effectively. After rest, attention becomes clearer. Emotional balance improves. Experience feels more coherent. As sleep unfolds, consciousness learns how to release control. It yields to internal rhythms. This yielding is essential for recovery. Attempts to maintain waking awareness during sleep interfere with this process. Letting go allows the transition to complete. The boundary between waking and sleeping awareness is porous. Thoughts drift into imagery. Sensations dissolve. Time loses definition. Recognizing this boundary as a spectrum rather than a line can make the transition gentler. There is no need to force sleep. Awareness fades when conditions support it. This understanding aligns with how sleep evolved. The brain is designed to alternate between engagement and withdrawal. Consciousness follows this rhythm naturally. As we approach the final stages of this exploration, attention turns toward what happens when awareness fully dissolves and how it later returns. In the next part, we'll explore why consciousness fades completely during certain phases of sleep and what allows it to re-emerge with continuity. As sleep deepens, there are moments when conscious experience appears to vanish entirely. These periods are often associated with the deepest stages of non-REM sleep, where neural activity becomes highly synchronized and slow. During these phases, there is little to no reportable awareness upon waking. From a scientific perspective, this disappearance does not mean the brain shuts down. Instead, it reflects a change in how information is integrated. Consciousness requires communication across distributed networks. When this communication becomes highly constrained, awareness fades. During deep sleep, brain regions still communicate, but in a different pattern. Activity becomes rhythmic and localized. Long-range connectivity decreases. Information is processed in isolated loops rather than shared globally. This reduction in integration appears to be key. Without widespread coordination, experience cannot unify into a conscious field. Signals may still occur, but they do not combine into awareness. This explains why deep sleep feels timeless. Without integration across moments, there is no sense of duration. Awareness does not track passage, it simply ceases to form. Yet, this absence is temporary. The brain cycles naturally. As integration increases again, awareness returns. This return is usually seamless. There is no sense of a gap. One moment you are asleep, the next you are awake. This seamlessness highlights an important feature of consciousness. It does not require memory of every moment to feel continuous. Awareness resumes without needing to account for what occurred during unconscious phases. The brain maintains identity and context even when awareness is offline. Memory systems preserve continuity. This allows experience to restart smoothly. The re-emergence of consciousness depends on restoring integration. As sleep lightens, connectivity increases. Attention networks re-engage. Sensory processing becomes more responsive. This transition is often accompanied by brief imagery or thoughts. Awareness flickers before stabilizing. These transitional states reveal how consciousness rebuilds itself gradually. Importantly, the return of awareness is influenced by bodily signals. Light, sound, and movement provide cues. Internal signals, such as hunger or discomfort, also play a role. The brain evaluates these signals and adjusts state accordingly. This responsiveness demonstrates that consciousness is adaptive. It emerges when conditions favor engagement. It recedes when withdrawal supports recovery. Understanding this cycle helps explain why awareness cannot be forced. Consciousness arises from conditions rather than command. It follows biological rhythms. These rhythms are resilient but sensitive. Disruption can fragment awareness. Irregular sleep schedules, stress, and overstimulation interfere with the brain's ability to transition smoothly. Fragmented sleep leads to partial awareness. Consciousness may surface briefly without full integration. This results in grogginess and confusion. Conversely, stable rhythms support clean transitions. Awareness fades fully during rest and returns refreshed. These observations also inform theories about consciousness more broadly. They suggest that awareness depends on network dynamics rather than specific content. When dynamics support integration, consciousness emerges. This insight connects sleep research to waking awareness. Attention, emotion, and bodily state influence integration during the day as well. Consciousness fluctuates continuously. Understanding these fluctuations demystifies them. Awareness is not fragile. It adapts. The brain does not cling to consciousness. It uses it when useful and withdraws it when rest is needed. This efficiency supports long-term functioning. From this perspective, unconsciousness is not a failure. It is a feature. It allows restoration. This reframing can reduce anxiety around sleep. Losing awareness temporarily is not dangerous. It is necessary. As awareness fades, the brain continues to operate intelligently. It consolidates memory, regulates systems, and prepares for the next cycle. When awareness returns, it does so without drama. Experience resumes as if uninterrupted. This continuity without awareness suggests that consciousness is not the container of existence. It is a mode of engagement. Reality persists whether or not it is experienced. Consciousness dips in and out, shaping experience, but not sustaining existence. This understanding allows consciousness to be appreciated without clinging. It comes and goes naturally. As we approach the final stages of this exploration, the focus shifts from mechanisms to meaning. After examining how consciousness fades and returns, what remains is the experience of being aware at all. In the next part, we'll explore consciousness as an ongoing process rather than a state, and how this perspective brings together everything we've examined so far. When consciousness is viewed not as a fixed state, but as an ongoing process, many of its puzzling features become easier to understand. Awareness is not something the brain possesses. It is something the brain does. It emerges when conditions allow and recedes when they do not. This process-oriented view aligns with what neuroscience reveals. There is no single switch for consciousness. There is no central location where awareness resides. Instead, consciousness arises from coordinated activity across many systems, each contributing part of the overall experience. These systems continuously interact. Sensory input, memory, emotion, attention, and bodily signals are integrated moment by moment. Awareness reflects the balance of these interactions rather than their individual components. Because this balance is dynamic, consciousness is always changing. Even during waking life, awareness fluctuates subtly. Focus sharpens and softens. Thoughts come and go. Emotional tone shifts. Yet the sense of presence remains. This persistence of presence does not require stability of content. It depends on continuity of process. As long as integration is maintained, awareness feels continuous. Understanding consciousness as a process also explains why it is sensitive to disruption. Fatigue, stress, illness, or injury can alter integration. Awareness becomes fragmented or diminished, not because something is missing, but because coordination has changed. This sensitivity is not a weakness. It reflects adaptability. Consciousness adjusts to conditions rather than insisting on constant intensity. During demanding tasks, awareness narrows to support efficiency. During rest, it broadens. During sleep, it withdraws. These shifts are functional responses to context. The process view also clarifies why consciousness cannot be fully controlled. You cannot decide to be aware in deep sleep, nor can you force unconsciousness when the body is alert. Awareness follows biological and environmental conditions. Attempts to dominate this process often backfire. Effort increases arousal. Arousal sustains awareness. Letting go allows the process to unfold naturally. This principle applies broadly. Attention settles when not forced. Emotions soften when allowed to pass. Sleep arrives when conditions support it. The process view also reframes the sense of self. Identity is not a static entity, but a pattern maintained over time. Memories, habits, and emotional tendencies contribute to this pattern, but it is continuously updated. When circumstances change, the pattern adapts. Identity evolves. This flexibility allows learning and growth. At the same time, continuity of process preserves familiarity. You recognize yourself despite change. This balance between stability and flexibility is central to conscious experience. From this perspective, consciousness is not a thing to protect or preserve. It is an activity that unfolds as long as conditions support it. When conditions change, the activity changes. This understanding can reduce fear around altered states. Sleep, dreaming, and unconsciousness are not losses. They are transformations of the same underlying process. It also informs how consciousness is approached in daily life. Rather than striving for constant clarity or control, awareness can be supported indirectly. Rest, rhythm, and balance become priorities. The process view aligns with how the brain evolved. Organisms that could flexibly engage and disengage awareness had an advantage. Energy could be conserved. Recovery could occur. Adaptation was possible. Consciousness, in this sense, is economical. It is used when useful and withdrawn when not. This economy extends to mental effort. Awareness does not need to monitor everything. It focuses selectively. Much processing occurs without awareness, freeing resources. Understanding this can reduce the pressure to remain constantly aware or productive. The brain is designed for fluctuation, not constant engagement. As awareness unfolds, It remains grounded in the present moment, even when it references past or future. The process always occurs now. This immediacy gives consciousness its vivid quality. Experience feels alive because it is continuously recreated. At the same time, the process is fragile in certain ways. Disruption of integration can impair awareness. This fragility underscores the importance of conditions that support coherence. Sleep, nutrition, social connection, and emotional regulation all contribute. Consciousness depends on the whole system, not just the brain. This holistic view encourages a broader understanding of mental well-being. Supporting consciousness means supporting the body, environment, and rhythms that sustain it. As this exploration nears completion, what emerges is a picture of consciousness as both ordinary and remarkable. It is ordinary because it follows natural principles. It is remarkable because it allows reality to be experienced. Consciousness does not stand apart from the universe. It is one of its expressions. Through awareness, the universe becomes aware of itself, not in a mystical sense, but through natural processes. This does not require assigning purpose or destiny. It simply reflects the capacity of complex systems to experience. In this way, consciousness connects the personal and the cosmic. Individual experience is grounded in universal laws. Awareness reflects the same principles that govern stars and galaxies. This connection does not diminish individuality. It contextualizes it. Each conscious moment is both unique and part of a larger pattern. As awareness continues, it does so quietly. It does not need explanation to be present. It does not require effort to continue. In the final part, we'll bring this journey to a close by allowing awareness to rest within this understanding, gently transitioning from exploration to stillness and from thought to quiet presence. As this exploration comes to a close, there is no need to hold on to ideas or conclusions. Everything discussed so far was never meant to be remembered in detail. It was meant to create a gentle understanding of how awareness moves, shifts, and eventually rests. Consciousness, as we've seen, is not something rigid. It is not a fixed state that must be maintained. It is a process that naturally rises and falls. It becomes vivid when conditions support engagement, and it softens when rest is needed. At this moment, there is nothing left to analyze. The brain does not need to solve anything further. Awareness does not need to follow concepts. The systems that support experience can begin to slow, just as they do every night. Breathing continues on its own. The body maintains its rhythm without effort. Muscles release small amounts of tension without instruction. These processes have always known how to unfold. Thoughts may still appear, but they no longer need attention. They can pass like distant sounds, present but unimportant. Awareness does not have to follow them. As the nervous system settles, integration gently decreases. Attention loosens its focus. Sensory input fades into the background. Consciousness begins to feel less defined, less centered on content. This softening is not a loss. It is a transition. The same process that allows awareness to exist also allows it to rest. The brain prepares for sleep by reducing vigilance. It no longer needs to monitor the environment closely. Internal rhythms take priority. Awareness becomes quieter, simpler. Memory, emotion, and perception slowly disengage from one another. The sense of time weakens. Moments no longer need to connect. Experience becomes less structured. There is nothing to hold on to and nothing to release. The process unfolds on its own. As awareness fades, the brain continues its work quietly. It integrates experiences, restores balance, and prepares for the next cycle. Consciousness does not need to supervise this. Sleep is not something to achieve. It is something that happens when effort stops. When monitoring ends, rest begins. If awareness drifts, that is enough. If it disappears, that is also enough. There is no requirement to notice the transition. The same principles that shaped consciousness throughout the universe now guide it inward. Complexity gives way to simplicity. Activity gives way to rhythm. The universe continues its motion, regardless of awareness. Stars form and fade. Systems organize and dissolve. Consciousness follows the same pattern. For now, awareness is free to rest. There is no need to remain present. The process knows how to continue without attention. As the final thoughts dissolve, experience becomes lighter. Sensation softens. The boundary between thought and silence fades. Nothing more is required. Rest can arrive naturally, and when awareness returns, it will do so gently, just as it always does. Until then, there is only quiet, and that is enough.